Hello everyone, welcome back to LaExcellence Bengaluru presents current issue of the day, episode number 137. In this episode, we will be discussing a very important topic which is especially important from the mains perspective given the current global scenario. That topic is nuclear non-proliferation treaty. Okay, we will see what is this nuclear non-proliferation treaty, why it is in news, and what is its relation with India, and other stuffs we will be discussing in today's class. Okay, why it is very significant and what is role of India and NPT. So before this, we'll understand which part of the UPSC syllabus it comes under. It comes under GS2 international relations, bilateral, regional and global groupings and agreements involving India. Okay, so all the groupings or the agreements which involves India becomes very important from your UPSC preparation. Now, what is the context? Why are we going to discuss this? The treaty has been there from the long time, but why are we discussing it now? That is because amid intensifying war with Israel, Iran's parliament began drafting a bill to exit the nuclear non-proliferation treaty. Okay, very important treaty, and now an important member of the treaty is passing a bill to exit this treaty. Okay, so first, before we understand what this bill is about or what this NPT is about, first I will tell you a story. Okay, so the story goes like this. So we all know there was two important wars that happened during 1914 to 1919. That was famously called as First World War. It was called as First World War because of the scale of people involved, scale of the members involved, and the scale and the increasing technology of the weaponry involved. Okay, it is in this war that aircraft began to be used extensively. Okay, that is the major significance or the major improvement in military during this age. And then it also resulted in machine guns, okay, with which now we are able to kill multiple people with a single shot. Okay, and then there was another significant war that happened during 1941 to 1945 or 1940 to 1945, depending on the countries which are involved. This was famously called as Second World War. Okay, so this was between Axis versus Allied powers. Okay, Axis powers led by Japan, Italy, and very famous Nazi Germany. Okay, and the Allied powers were initially UK or United Kingdom or the England, then there was France, and then there was Russia, and after the incident of kamikaze attack by the Japan on the Pearl Harbor in USA entered the chart. You can say that USA entered the chart or USA entered the World War II. Okay, in this war there were a significant improvements in weaponry. Okay, few of the important significant improvements were the second generation fighter jets. Okay, second generation fighter jets. Second generation fighter jets, and also introduction of many machine guns, anti-tank missiles, submarines, etc., etc., etc. Okay, these were developed by most of the countries that were involved in the war. Okay, but there was another significant invention during the Second World War which shook the world as we know. That is the atomic bomb. Atomic bomb or nuclear bomb. Okay, nuclear bomb. It was developed by the USA. The war in Europe was almost over. The Germany, Italy have already surrendered. Hitler, like as the rumors say, he fled to Argentina and committed suicide there, and Germany also fell, Europe also fell, and the only remaining contestant or the only remaining soldier or the participant in this war was Japan from the Axis power. Japan was mainly feuding with USA. Japan were not accepting their defeat. As a result, USA took a very significant decision, that is to drop atomic bomb on Japan. The two infamous cities Hiroshima and Nagasaki were plundered and the people living in that area were destroyed altogether. This resulted in a new world order. Okay, new world order, and everyone in that world decided that the nuclear weapon is to have. Okay, if you want to achieve autonomy or strategic autonomy or a superpower status, the main thing that you have to have is not the economic development, not anything else, it is the nuclear weapons. Okay, so first, under the Project Manhattan and the infamous or the famous recently movie was there, his name I'm not getting his name, because under his guidance USA developed nuclear weapon under Project Manhattan, and later the USA was followed by these countries. So USA tested and then dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, and later following USA it was the Russia. During their Cold War, Russia also tested nuclear test in 1949 and developed its own nuclear weapons as well as hydrogen bombs. They went a step further, and following them was the allies of USA, that is UK. They tested their bombs in 1952 and developed their own nuclear weapons. Following them was the France, which developed their own nuclear weapons by 1960, and from the superpowers of Europe and USA, it then turned into Asian supergiants, that is China. So China tested the first nuclear device in 1964. Okay, 1964, and then India, considering the issue or considering the double threat of China and Pakistan, decided to conduct its own nuclear weapon test. That was in 1978, and the weapons were tested in 1988. Okay, Operation Smiling Buddha. India faced many criticism from the various countries because they didn't want India to become a nuclear weapon country. But our Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and later Vajpayee said that more than what the world thinks about us, strategic autonomy and the safety and security of India from the immediate neighbors is very important for us. So India got the weapons in 1988, and immediately following that, Pakistan also got the nuclear weapons with the help of China in 1988. And after that, it was the North Korea. It withdrew from the NPT and then developed its own nuclear weapons in 2006. And there was Israel. Israel also developed its own nuclear weapons. These are the important countries which developed nuclear weapons. Now, what is this NPT? Okay. So people understood that nuclear weapon is a very significant weapons which cannot be used without responsibility. So all the nuclear weapon countries decided to bring an agreement or a treaty. That treaty was Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT. Under this, what they wanted is, whatever the countries which have nuclear weapons now, it should be limited. No countries should be developing their own weapons anymore, because if every country has nuclear weapons, it would lead to another world war. So under this, guys, that the responsible countries with the countries which have nuclear weapons decided to bring an agreement so that other countries cannot develop nuclear weapons. So it is as undemocratic as it gets. Okay, that is why this treaty is always in contention. Now the story is over. We'll get back to the NPT. Okay, so what is this NPT? So it is a global agreement aimed at preventing the spread of nuclear weapons, promoting peaceful nuclear energy and advancing nuclear disarmament. Okay, that is, nuclear energy is not only a tool to be used for weapons, it is also a source of energy. It should be used for nuclear energy purposes, and it should be used for peaceful purposes. Okay, and then enforcement, it was opened for the signature on June 12, 1968. Immediately after the four countries were able to develop the weapons, the country said that enough is enough, now we will develop a treaty. and even China said, yeah, first I will develop my own nuclear weapon, then we can start this treaty. So it was delayed till 1970. It came into force on March 5, 1970. And what is the nature of this treaty? The treaty is the only binding international treaty that requires nuclear weapon states to pursue disarmament. Okay, nuclear weapon states to pursue disarmament. That is, whatever the weapons we have to disarm them. Okay, and that is what nuclear proliferation treaty is. Under this treaty, states are categorized into two states. One is states with the nuclear weapons, another one is non-nuclear weapon states. Okay, NWS and non-nuclear weapon states. And then the key features are, first thing is they define nuclear weapon states. Under this, not every country that has nuclear weapons is a nuclear weapon state, but there is a particular definition as on 1970. That is, countries that had nuclear weapons or tested nuclear weapons before January 1, 1957. Okay, so which are these countries? USA, UK, France, Russia, China. You can see a peculiar pattern here. These are also the countries which are the permanent members of United Nations Security Council. The so-called responsible countries or so-called veto power countries or the so-called P5 countries were the countries which had nuclear weapons. They said, since we have nuclear weapons, let us bring a treaty that no other countries can develop nuclear weapons. It is undemocratic in nature. There are certain obligations put on the non-nuclear weapon states as well as non-nuclear weapon states. That are, non-nuclear weapon states agree not to manufacture or acquire nuclear weapons, whereas nuclear weapon states pledge not to transfer nuclear weapons or assist non-nuclear weapon states in acquiring them. Okay, they said that, okay, non-nuclear weapon states, we will not develop any nuclear weapons. Again, nuclear weapon states, you should not transfer your nuclear weapon technology to our enemies. Okay, but that is exactly what happened in the case of China and Pakistan in case of India. Okay, so these treaties are meant not to be broken, but they are always broken by the higher powers. Then there is also a peaceful use clause, that is, all parties are allowed to develop nuclear energy for peaceful purposes under International Atomic Energy Agency safeguards. Okay, so this IAEA is a monitoring agency under this one. That is, you can develop nuclear weapons, nuclear technology, but doesn't mean you have to develop nuclear weapons. You can use the nuclear technology for the purpose of energy development, for other peaceful purposes, but not for the purpose of development of weapons. Okay, so the monitoring agency is International Atomic Energy Agency. It verifies compliance through inspections and reporting. There is also a withdrawal clause, that is, any country which has joined has also a clause, that is, Article 10 allows a country to withdraw within 3 months notice if the national interests are jeopardized. Okay, so this is what Iran is quoting at the moment. Iran is saying that our national interests are being jeopardized. As a result, we are going to withdraw from this treaty and develop our own nuclear weapons. Okay, this is why India was also against this NPT. Okay, we'll look about that later now. Then, so these are the countries that have signed or not signed. So Israel, widely believed to possess sophisticated nuclear assets, though pursues policy of ambiguity over its possession. That is, no one knows if Israel has nuclear weapons or not, but many believe that they possess nuclear weapons with the help of USA. And so one of the important state we have to remember is South Sudan. That is, it is the only African nation non-signatory to the non-proliferation treaty. Okay, so that is why it becomes very important. Rest of the countries have already signed it, and North Korea is also one of the country which has not signed it. Now, India and NPT. First and foremost thing is India signatory? No. India said absolute no. As long as all the countries don't have any nuclear weapons, all the countries don't disarm their nuclear weapons, we are not going to sign this NPT. Okay, that is what. And has consistently refused to join, calling it discriminatory. Why is it discriminatory? Obviously, all the P5 countries have already created their own weapons. Some believe that USA has more than 1000 nuclear weapons with 500 hydrogen bombs. Even Russia has a similar amount of bombs. China has more than 300 bombs. Okay, nuclear weapons, etc. already at the arsenal. Now you are asking other countries without the nuclear weapons to not generate nuclear weapons. That is discriminatory in nature. India argues that the treaty legitimizes nuclear weapons in the hands of only 5 countries while denying them to others. Okay, that is why it is undemocratic and that is why it is discriminatory in nature. Then India conducted its first nuclear test in 1974 under the Smiling Buddha operation and maintains a no first use policy. This is very important doctrine under India's foreign policy. No first use policy. According to this, we are not going to use nuclear weapons as a first means of weapon. Okay, as a first mode of means. Instead, if someone is going to use nuclear weapons against us, we are going to come with 10 times more deterrence. This is what we discussed in our previous videos about Project Vishnu, where we discussed about deterrence. Then, despite being outside the non-proliferation treaty, India is regarded as a responsible nuclear power and adheres to the non-proliferation norms. Okay, so what India is doing is, without signing the treaty, India is following all the norms. That is, it is not developing any more weapons. Then, non-members of NPT and certain countries are planning to leave. Some of the non-signatories are India and Pakistan have never signed the treaty, but both possess nuclear weapons. This is known. And then Israel is also non-signatory and maintains a strategic ambiguity about its nuclear weapons. And then comes South Sudan, which I already explained it, is a non-signatory without no nuclear ambitions. And then countries that withdrew or plan to withdraw are North Korea, which signed the treaty in 1985 but again withdrew in 2003 and developed its own weapons in 2006. Then there is Iran, though it is a signatory from 1970, has recently threatened to withdraw. That is what we are discussing now, citing IAEA censor and security concern linked to the tensions with Israel. Okay, so Iran has every right that it is going to withdraw from this treaty because they are forcing an immediate threat from Israel as well as USA. Okay, and there have been many cyber attacks on the like Iran's nuclear treaty. Okay, Iran's nuclear technology. So they are saying that if you are going to keep attacking nuclear technologies and if you are going to kill our scientists about nuclear technology, we are going to withdraw from this NPT and develop our own treaty or develop our own weapons. And then there is, if Iran leaves, it would end IAEA inspections and raise fears of nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Okay, one more thing, another aspect of this is, if Iran is going to develop a nuclear weapons, okay, if Iran is going to develop a nuclear weapon, its immediate or its arch nemesis, that is the Sunni dominated Saudi Arabia, is also going to develop a nuclear weapon. Okay, so Iran is a Shia dominated country which always has issues with Saudi Arabia. They are going to develop like nuclear weapons. If Saudi Arabia has nuclear weapons, its immediate neighbors such as Qatar, Kuwait, Jordan, etc., they might also jump into this arm race. That is why people or the authorities are adamant on not letting Iran leave this treaty or adamant on not letting Iran possess their own nuclear weapons. So this is about today's discussion. So I said that it is very important from UPSC perspective. Why? Because there have been previous year questions asked on a similar basis. So there is such one question for your practice. So read the question and pause the video and write your answer down. I will read out the statement and the question. What is or are the consequences of a country becoming a member of nuclear suppliers group? This is another suppliers or another group which is related to nuclear. It will have access to the latest and most efficient nuclear technologies. 2. It automatically becomes the member of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, that is NPT. So which of the above statements are correct? So options are 1 only, 2 only, both, D, neither. Pause the video and write your comment or write your answer in the comment box. So since the mains is going on, these states become very important. I am planning to make a video. The next video will be about all the treaties that are dealing with nuclear, both on land, air, outspace, etc., and the stand of India with respect to those treaties. We will be discussing them in the next class. Since I didn't want this video to be dragged on, I kept that as a second class. Okay, so if you like this video and if you think you gained something out of this video, then please hit the like button, comment on it, and also share with your friends. With this, I will end the video. Jai Hind.